Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Robin Yap, and welcome to a new season of Yap with Dr. Yap. Today, we have a special guest with us, and it's Alex Fullick. He is an award winning business continuity and operational resilience expert with over 20 years of experience. He is the managing director of Stone Road, holds numerous industry certifications, and is an author of several books, which you can find everywhere. He is also the creator and host of the globally recognized leading business continuity and resilience podcast, Preparing for the Unexpected. Welcome to Yap, Dr. Yap. Alex.
I thank you for inviting me. It's quite the pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
All right. So let's start with something basic and easy and something that
Sure.
you are an expert of. Organizational resilience culture. What is that?
It's more than what a lot of leadership individuals think it is. One of the first things that come to mind when I talk about culture is a lot of leaders say, well, yeah, we have a great culture. We have an open door policy. And then I challenge them on that. Oh, yeah, what's that mean? Oh, people can book meetings with me. And then when you start peeling back that onion, you start finding out that, yeah, you have an open door policy, but they have to schedule with somebody else to come and see you, which then you reschedule and bump them off in hopes they never come and actually see you. So you never really have an open door policy because you never really talk to anybody. You put too many obstacles in their way. And a lot of times, your leaders will say, we empower our staff. Oh, so if you're empowering your staff, that means they have some level of autonomy and or business decision making, but they can never actually do that. They always have to go up a chain to get decisions, even tiny little ones. I've been on programs, multi-million dollar programs, where we've had to escalate, a $50 change up to senior leadership to approve. Well, there's no empowerment there, but yet leadership say we empower our people, we have a great culture, and it's like, no, you're saying one thing and doing another. The two never seem to align. And culture should allow people to be able to do that, to grow, to have a safe environment where they can sit in a meeting with leadership or without leadership and bring forward risks and issues or their own opinion that may be different than the person who's speaking, saying that, this is the direction we want to go and here's how we're going to do it. And someone should feel free and safe enough to say, well, what if you change it this way? You can actually fix this other problem as well and still get all the benefits that you're looking for. Someone should be able to do that. And a lot of organizations, they say they allow that, but they really don't. It's all what I call lip service. You know,
Right.
they say they say one thing but do another. They want you to feel comfortable, but they don't let you be comfortable. And I find that some of the big challenges with culture, and it's a lot of times in my industry, because I talk about crises and disasters and things like that, is that it's all responsive. So when someone comes forward and says, hey, I think we have a risk with XYZ vendor or with such and such system, they want to be able to bring that forward proactively, in a proactive manner in the safe spaces that they can do that and using an open door policy to be able to bring that forward. And a lot of places just it's reactive. Oh, if you're talking about disasters and crisis, we have to wait for something to happen. And then we complain about it after the fact. Why didn't someone that bring that forward before if we knew about it?
Right.
Well, you've said you want to hear all those things, but you put all the roadblocks in place to prevent it from ever happening.
Mhm.
So culture is getting rid of those roadblocks to allow people to move forward as a team and bring this stuff forward. So culture isn't just, every Tuesday we bring in pizza, so we have a great culture. Well, that's great. If you're bringing in pizza, great. I'll have a slice. Doesn't mean I'm any happier. So so that's what I see culture as. It's more open, more uh, fluid to bring ideas forward, risks and issues, and being able to have those one-on-one discussions with leadership and managers, their managers as well, and not just going down a tick box, of, yeah, we get all this stuff done, we're great. It's like, yeah, but if it's tick box, then we don't have a great culture because you're just going to get the bare minimum to get that tick box. So, I look at culture a little bit differently than, some people. It's not bunnies and rainbows all the time.
Right. So many believe that a lot of this decision making is more top down. So, what role do you think frontline employees and middle managers can do in sustaining this change, especially, before and probably more importantly as well after, but maybe more importantly before? So tell me.
Well, decision making, I think I kind of alluded to it, some empowerment before, and I had the $50 example there, which is actually a real example, believe it or not. Um, Decision making, I think, should be uh, at all levels. Before a disaster, using that $50 example again, when you're in a crisis or before a crisis and you want to prevent something from happening, okay, we need a decision from leadership on, let's say, purchasing an alternate site, where we can send all our workers or rebuild some of our technology equipment, have some there already in place. Okay, you're probably going to want big leadership on there as a part of that, understanding why, the benefits, what risk is it addressing. But you're also going to want people that are frontline who are going through a crisis or beforehand saying, hey, if we have a process, if we put this plan together, or this standard operating procedure, they should be able to make those decisions at that level because that's what they're knowledgeable about. So the decision making needs to be all over the place at all levels, kind of everyone within parameters and their sphere of influence. Of course, someone on front line is not going to make a decision on the multi-million-dollar alternate site decision for leadership. Of course, it's that would be silly to do. Um, and then the another part of that too is not just before and during to make those decisions, but also afterwards. The lessons learned and the follow-up with after action reports, understanding that, hey, we just went through this crisis. We may or may not have made the right decisions beforehand, but now we just went through a crisis. So let's revisit those decisions, change them what that need to be changed, keep doing what we are doing, but make sure we actually make change occur. Because otherwise, if change isn't occurred to a lesson, then the lesson wasn't learned. The lesson was only observed. So here's the things that we need to implement or redo or even start doing, build from scratch and assign resources to them. Let's make it a project if it's something large. If it's changing a plan, well, then fine, let's make sure that plan is changed. So the next person that comes along who picks it up and has to follow that line by line won't make the same mistake we made before. So make those decisions on that level. And that then can funnel up to the executive saying, hey, we made the right decision about identifying all these lessons learned. We are now in a better place than we were before. We learned our lessons. And along the way, everyone is making the right decisions because they've all got the same focus and they're all learning from it. So I think everyone needs to have all the levels, frontline, mid-level, and senior level, will have decisions to make along the road. And the decisions they make should be based on their, as I said earlier, their sphere of influence of where they are and what they're doing, and working together. We can make these 10 changes to make this better if senior level makes this decision up here. If they make a different decision, well, then this is also what some of the impacts may be. So you have to do some of your homework before you send some of these things up the ladder to senior leadership because they want the options. They're not going to sit there in the boardroom and go, oh, okay, we have to make a decision on such and such, and then have a big discussion about it. They want the options. So frontline people, if you want leadership to make decisions for you or so that you can make the decisions you need to make, do your homework. Make sure you go to senior leadership with options to help them make better and stronger decisions, the pros and cons of doing it this way or that way. So So everyone's involved with decision making on at some level, I believe.
Hi, everyone. This is just a quick intermission on our sponsor today, ExpressVPN. For a free 30-day trial, make sure that you click on the link that I've posted down in our description below. And you want to make sure that you check it out. It's a free 30-day, no hassle, no risk uh, opportunity for you to check it out. Whether you use ExpressVPN or any other VPN type service, I do suggest you have one, especially when you're out and a go and you never can presume that the location that you're at is always secure. Remember, the internet is, has a lot of people in it and has a lot of intentionalities on them. And you want to make sure that the intention that you have is safe, secure, and it's what your rules are rather than somebody else's. So there you go. Use the internet safely. Use a VPN. If you happen to check out ExpressVPN, that'd be great. Thanks. Bye. So you mentioned about these decisions and strategies. What would be a good example of one decision that where you first need to actually create, and then a reaction that happened because of that decision? So, what would be a good concrete example to kind of showcase?
Well, I have to go back. Um, let's see, quite a few years because I'm contracting now, so and have been for quite a few years. So I don't usually have to get involved with a lot of things anymore. It's nice. I'm only ever around 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, or 12 months. So not long enough to really get immersed into things. So I'll have to jump back to my full-time days, going almost 20 years now, where a decision was made to um, merge Canadian operations with American operations for this company. And they were touting the benefits of it. The decision was made, hey, this is great, that's great, wonderful. No one's going to lose their jobs and things like that. And then shortly after they started to implement this change, because they had sessions of the benefits and why they were doing it and things like that, and it all made sense. It all sounded good. And then a couple of weeks later, suddenly a team was let go. Oh, now because of the merge, the American operations are going to take over these systems. We don't need the Canadian ones anymore. So suddenly 8 to 10 people were gone. Well, what ended up happening then is the rest of the Canadian operations, all the people started to back off and weren't sharing as much information anymore, and sometimes would leave out bits of information. So they ended up at a point where while this was going on, believe it or not, we had a big disaster recovery test. Well, suddenly we have Canadian and US people that are supposed to be working together to bring up all these systems, suddenly butting heads. Nobody wanted to share information anymore, and they couldn't get some things to work as a result of it. And after it was a two and a half day long test, roughly, and after a day and a half, we had to shut it down because so many issues were popping up where nobody would share. So this change that had all these great intentions and shared all these benefits, the actions that came after the change were the opposite. And suddenly any goodwill that was created was lost. And people were leaving. They even had to bring back one of the people they let go because they were the subject matter expert that not a single American knew how to do, and they encountered issues. So suddenly they had client impacts. And all this change that they put through just didn't work out. And it took them a long time to get things fixed and back into place. And that was around the time that I left, actually, because I knew my role was probably going to disappear. But yet I was the only one who knew the Canadian operations. So I don't know how they fixed it, but that was not a happy, good example of identifying a change. They had the right people in the room, and they were communicating the right message, but their actions to follow up didn't align with what they were saying. And that came back to bite them.
Right now, in thinking about what's going on with the world right now, and there's quite a bit of stress for a lot of people,
Mm.
and possibility of potential need for business continuity, whether in the same location, outside, or whatever. What you have seen in the past is, I mean, you've written about communication being very important. And how does that actually work in real life? Considering that sometimes we do have structured kind of strategies in place, and then human behavior takes over and everything goes all over the place. What do leaders need to do to corral people back so that then disaster recovery, business continuity, and this idea of cultural resilience actually taking place in real life and in real time?
The first thing would be nice if leadership actually did communicate. Quite often, they delay their communications uh, to go through legal and make sure they're not committing to something and use all this fancy verbiage that by the time they send something out, the employee base already has their opinion and has an idea of what's going on. And leadership quite often is late to the table. Be proactive. You don't have to say a lot, with all these things that are going on. Recent events as we're recording, I don't know when this will air, but as we're recording, we know there are uh, potentially a war in the Middle East that's going to escalate even more than it is already. Well, right away, tell your people, watch out for demonstrations. If you're going by specific embassies, take a longer route around it just in case. Don't get involved. Simple little things like that acknowledges that, hey, leadership is paying attention, and is thinking of me. And that's one of the things that leadership forgets, is organization first. Well, that's funny because you always tout your people as being your best asset, but they're the last ones to ever know anything. So it doesn't, again, it's not making sense. It doesn't align. And with business continuity and resilience professionals, risk people, they've got to start working and communicating together as well because they're all seeing the same headlines. So reach out, say something. Like, hey, are we covered? Are there any things we need to communicate up the ladder? Do we need to tell HR to consider enacting any policies if people are afraid to come to the office because we're right beside the U.S. Embassy as a an example? What kind of things should we consider? Tell people to stay at home until they feel comfortable. To what kind of things, take a proactive approach and reach out and don't just send out an email too. That's the other problem with communications. We send an email and think everyone reads it. Well, how many emails do you get, Dr. Yap? A lot, probably. I know I do.
172 on average.
Yeah, yeah. And I get tons a day too, with spam ones and phishing ones, no matter how good your security is, they somehow a lot of those still find their way in. Well, so who's got time to read all of those? So don't be afraid, if for communications to walk the floor then, or reach out. A manager reaches out, or let's say I'll be the manager and I have a team of five. Let's have a quick Teams meeting. Hey, I know things are going on. Make it more personal that way. And then people can build that trust between leadership and management. Not that I'm calling myself a leader, but leadership and management, and do those kind of things. Don't just send an email or pick up the phone. Remember a phone? I know we all have these smartphones, but they're mostly used for pictures these days, and text messages. But you can actually make phone calls with them. Call someone. Hey, I know you have family in Ukraine. Are you okay? Simple things like that builds trust. And when you have trust, it builds innovation, all simply because you're improving on your communications. It can lead to many other areas. And waiting to send an email from leadership from the top down, yeah, sometimes that's the way it's got to work. But a lot of times you yourself have to either go down or across and reach out to your peers and colleagues. don't leave it to somebody else. Communication is everybody, right? And it's receiving messages, sending messages. It's if it's just one person sending one message every so often, well, then it's like monologue, right? It's not dialogue. So,
Right.
I think when it comes to communications and in crises and things that are happening, like you said, around the globe, don't be afraid to say something. And that's the other thing. A lot of people are afraid to say something. And am I the one, if I put my hand up, am I going to get hit down? Right? Because I brought something forward. Bring it forward. Because if you're thinking it, others are too. So communicate it. Open up those channels. And you start building a network that way too, and relationships between management, with leadership and with your peers. So communication is key. It's like I like to think of it as an archway, and the communication is the keystone right on the top. You take that out, and everything ends up falling. And innovation falls, trust falls, resentment, and people end up leaving if they're not being communicated properly. So use every way possible. Don't just rely on sending an email from one group because that's just not going to cut it.
Yeah, it's interesting. A couple of days ago, I had call with my cousins, and my cousins are all over the world. And one of the things that my oldest cousin said, we need to ensure that we have our call tree set up. And I actually thought of that when you were talking about communication, because I think it is one of those things that we do use at work that can actually be used personally as well,
Mhm.
because, you know, that is
Yeah,
important. And as you said, use the phone.
yeah.
What's the one thing that you can share with everyone and say, this is something that you can do tomorrow? And that's the one thing that you need to take away from this, and then kind of go from there. What would that be?
That's not an easy question it sounds easy, but it's not an easy question to answer. I think look at yourself first. If you want to make a change for someone else, for your organization, for your community, start making that change within yourself. I kind of mentioned it earlier on that if leadership isn't, if their actions don't align with their words, you're destroying trust. So if you want to improve someone else's life or processes at work or improve communications, you have to look at yourself and make an honest decision. Am I doing what I say? And set about a plan to make that change happen within yourself. Others will see that, and then it'll start to grow. They'll start to notice, hey, Dr. Yap is, he's really calm under pressure. Alex always tells us about what's going on. I never feel like I'm in the dark. And when they get in a situation, they'll start absorbing that, and they'll start changing. And then what happens? They influence. It's like, the old commercial, who told two people, who told another two people, who told another two people, I forget the product, but that was part of the commercial. That was on TV years ago. That's what happens. Start with yourself, it'll get to another person. Then they will tell people. And it grows that way. And that's how you'll foster better communications, the culture, the change, the positive changes you want to see. I think if you're going to take anything away and you want to make change, you want to make things better, start with yourself. That's where it all begins. Start changing your mindset.
It is amazing. Thank you so much, Alex, for taking the time to chat with us today, and totally appreciate your insights into ensuring that we are ready for whatever inevitable that may potentially happen. And for everyone else, make sure you follow Alex in all of his socials and get a bunch of his books. And all of that information is down below. Thanks a lot, everyone. See ya.
Thank you.